Alexander-Arnold, it's from him!
From doubter to believer.
G'day everyone, welcome to the LFC Couch. This is George, and with me by my side as always is the coach Peter Kofinas. In the land of the rose, it's nighttime this time. We're not here in the sunny sunshine of Roselands, Pete. It's nighttime because we've got a special show today.
I was just about to say we've got a special guest with us today, an old friend.
We've got Jamie Holme on the line, over Zoom actually. How you going, Jamie?
Well, good lads. How are you getting on? You got big smiles on your faces there. I can only imagine why.
This is great.
We're just going straight into it, are we?
I guess we are. Well, Jamie's from the Boot Room.
Sorry, I'm giddy.
He's from the Boot Room podcast. We've known each other for a little bit now. We love talking footy over the Twitter, over the WhatsApp and whatnot. But we thought we'd get Jamie on the couch, on the virtual couch, the Zoom couch, to chat about some things. But I tell you what, maybe we're all itching. We can't really wait to get into what's just gone on. How great for us. We decided to do a show, and lo and behold, Thiago seems to be on his way.
Yeah, it's something that's been a long time coming, lads. I'll be honest. If I could have cherry picked one player, and I know Pete, you're the same as yourself. If you could cherry pick one footballer to put into this Liverpool team in its current setup, for me it would have been Thiago. So the idea now that it looks like it's done, he's going to be on new number 6, 4-year deal. I'll be honest, lads, I actually don't think I've been this excited for a signing in a very long time, because I suppose if you think about it, Liverpool usually, they don't sign world-class players, they make them. And for me, you look at Thiago, he literally is elite. And, the idea that we're able to bring somebody of that caliber and put them straight into our side is unbelievably exciting.
It's actually a really good piece of trivia. When's the last time? Because I had this conversation with Pete with transfers. And it's always exciting talking about transfers. But I wanted us to steal someone from another team. I wanted us to just directly tax someone. I wanted Sane or something weird like that, where we just directly tax them. I will take Thiago. But on the same point, when was the last time we did sign someone world class like this? Is it few and far between?
Well, we said we can't mention Luis Suarez, we can't mention Fernando Torres, because they were great, or they were good before they came to us.
They were risks.
Yeah, but we made them great.
No one else took the risk on them.
No, and if you think Javi Alonso became world class with us, then after us, of course, we can go through a few more players that did the same kind of pathway, but then no, we've never actually, off the top of my head anyway, signed a world-class player already in prime age, 29 years old. I don't think that's old at all. I think that's prime for a matured holding midfielder. And I think, to be honest with you, this is arguably one of the biggest signings in the club's recent history.
It's this is a question for both of you guys. When do you think he signs? When do you think it's done? And if it's done pretty soon, are you tempted? And you know what my question is.
Not pre-Chelsea. Not for Chelsea. Is that what you're saying?
Why'd you
it's looking, lads. It's looking like we've got the medical booked for today. And the rumours being mooted is that he'd play in the League Cup next week. So he wouldn't be in time for Chelsea. It'd potentially be next week, which you'd probably say would be an easier game for him to step into.
So he'll be playing with our under-17s next week.
Exactly, mate. Yeah, imagine that.
I want him in the stands just to scare the shit out of Lampard.
Sitting next to him in the dressing room. Imagine being a 17-year-old Harvey Elliott turning around and looking at Thiago lacing up his boots.
I'll tell you what, I wouldn't stand up for at least 15 minutes.
Virgil van Dijk needs to find someone new, it seems, because Peter's moved on.
I would never cheat on Virgil.
Pete gets a little bit weird with Virgil van Dijk. There's talks about wearing skin.
We all do, mate.
We had this chat actually earlier over the Twitter, over our DMs. We were sliding into each other's DMs, and it's now quite intriguing. We'll get on to a little bit of post Leeds and then pre Chelsea, but it's interesting how Liverpool could possibly now that it's been dropped by Paul Joyce's weird Twitter. How weird is it? He just loves that little pad piece of paper.
What is that squiggle? It's like Mr. Squiggle.
I reckon he's been asked to be verified by Twitter about 20 times. He's like, no.
He has us all on strings, though, Tim. Fair play. We're just waiting for to be honest, lads, when you seen the news break, did you check his account to see if it was the real one? Because there's 2 Paul Joyces going around that have been burnt loads of times.
250%. I went in, and even then, because I'm like, is it underscore Paul Joyce or Paul Joyce underscore? But, when we did see that news, something that entered our minds over the Twitter when we were sort of messaging each other is how does Thiago now fit in? Does it lend itself to a 4-2-3-1, Jamie? Or, is he more suited to 4-3-3? I mean, Pete and I are huge fans of the 4-2-3-1. But obviously we do have a specialist number 6 in Fabinho, but Thiago's a bit different. We could probably use him in both systems.
Jamie, you can take this one.
First, yeah, I was going to say, I mean, from the outset, it's a champagne problem to have. I think what's important to remember is I don't think in any plans that Michael Edwards and the team have drew up, I don't think we've identified a centre midfielder in any of those plans, really. I think if we all sat down and said where were the problem areas, it would have been wide forward, centre back, left back cover. They would have been the hit list. As me and Peter spoke about privately, this is the type of player that comes along once in a lifetime, and we had to make it happen. Now, what that leaves us is we're very well stocked in an area where we didn't really have a problem. So for me, one of the most interesting parts now is what do we do to adapt? I think you're dead right in saying we could potentially move to a 4-2-3-1 and have Fabinho alongside Thiago as kind of a double pivot. But I suppose the secondary part of that is Liverpool have the majority of the ball in most of their games. So I'm not sure that we need a double 6 in those games. So then what does that say? Okay, maybe we stick with a 4-3-3. Fabinho plays as the 6 and Thiago is more advanced because we know he has the technical capabilities to do that. He can run between lines. He can feed passes. He sees passes that nobody else on the football pitch sees. And the other more controversial one is I could see Fabinho maybe dropping back into centre back, and I know a lot of people might kind of sniff at that because he's so specialist at what he does at the 6. But I think alongside Virgil van Dijk, having another central defender who can step out with the ball, his ability to read the game, he's strong in the air, he's combative, and that would probably remove the requirement of needing to go and buy centre-back cover. So what it does, it presents us with lots of options. And I think the best thing about Thiago and why this is such a transformational signing is a lot of teams are sussing onto the way we play, meaning if you block supply from wide, it makes it very difficult for us to create. Whereas Thiago drops in as the 6, he can create from deep, central, and it literally gives us a different dimension, which the front 3 must be licking their lips at.
Jamie, to be fair, all very, very good points. And I'll go back to where you started in talking about our midfield in terms of, well, there's not really an issue there, so why strengthen or why add to the midfield? I'll throw this at you then. Breaking down these deep defences you're talking about from the blocks that they create from the wide areas and in through the front of the goal area. Is that a midfield issue though? I think it is, in terms of someone in our midfield not having that creativity to find that pass that no one else can find other than Thiago. So it's kind of like, yes, we're stacked in midfield, but we don't have that key, the key that unlocks that kind of deep block. And I think it's not an issue, but it is, because we've seen teams like Everton, Atletico Madrid, all these teams that come back and just sit back and say, no, we're not having this today. And it's actually pulled off. So to evolve on what you were saying, I think the double pivot in a 4-2-3-1, it actually won't be a 4-2-3-1. I think it ends up being a 4 and a 6, because we have our 2 fullbacks who just continuously go. And then it comes like a front 4 that connect with the 2 bombing fullbacks. And all of a sudden we've got, Fabinho, Thiago, Van Dijk and Gomez as the 4 kind of like central square. They're just protecting every counter-attack possible. And I'd rather, to be honest with you, that sound there, for me, is so safe. It's such a safe feeling to know they're the 4 players that are defending our goal, with obviously the best goalkeeper in the world in between the sticks. So I think the double pivot actually has its benefits, considering how we play with our fullbacks.
I think you're bang on the money, and I'm glad you used the example of Atletico and Everton, because they were probably the teams that sort of sussed us out most effectively. And I think when you look at the central positions, I'm kind of the thinking that with formations, and you'll know this better than me, Pete, it's nearly like starting positions. And what Klopp wants from his team is he wants to be able to interchange. So although in theory we're saying, okay, we're starting with a 4-2-3-1, those midfielders are going to move into positions and try to, because if you play against a deep block, you have to interchange. If we just play side to side and we stay safe, we're not going to move teams out of position. So having the undoubted quality of those players is just going going to allow us to try and draw out those deep defences. And as you've seen Thiago use so effectively in the Champions League final, his ability to pick the ball up from deep and play through lines. I think, was it Bayern Munich's first goal came from him playing a pass which, to be honest, didn't even seem on through the lines. He got them turned and they were away. So, I think of the options, I think you're right, 4-2-3-1 does seem the most sensible. But I think for us now, with the volume of games that we're going to be playing and the high intensity and the demands that Klopp puts on these players, to be able to maintain it throughout the course of the season and challenge on four fronts, to have these level of players, I think there will be some rotation, but it certainly does give us another feather in the bow.
I think we can probably talk about Thiago all night. I think Pete and I were talking on the phone beforehand. We were messaging each other about it. There might be some time for some more Thiago chat later. It might even creep in as we talk about post Leeds and pre Chelsea. But I do want to get on to Leeds. We've already done a post show. We actually had a great show. For those listening who haven't listened to it yet, shame on you. But if you want to listen to the great James Pearce, it's a fantastic podcast that Nish hosted there. And James goes through, I think what was probably the most important thing for Liverpool out of that game. I mean, us scoring 4 goals, Mo Salah with a hat-trick is always fantastic. There were moments where we looked pretty good, although it's the defence that was the problem, and that's what James Pearce was stressing about. Pete, you used to be a defender, centre-back. I wouldn't mind getting both your opinions on what you saw was, are these problems that might persist, because last year we saw, especially with the Charity Shield, Community Shield, whatever the fuck they call it, with Manchester City, there was that very early on, Liverpool playing a higher line to try and compress all of the play into the opposition's half. We saw Man City and other teams trying to expose that early on. We actually got exposed by Norwich. In the first game week. The same thing. We considered that goal, but we considered a lot of chances. Is it happening again? Is it just the players trying to get into a new groove, Pete, or is it? Are we doing something? Are we stepping up another few yards, or is it just something you experienced at the beginning of the season? What was it in Leeds that you saw? Well,
it's not the beginning of the season, because since the COVID restart, I feel like all we've done is concede goals. We've gone from this unbelievable, impenetrable back four or defence as a team, to be honest with you, the way we press up high, but all of a sudden we've come back from the COVID break, and then it's actually been a consistent base of conceding goals. And was it after COVID break, was it complacency because we knew we'd win the league? You can say maybe, but the Leeds game for me was, again, we just seemed way too relaxed and disjointed. And I don't know, I can't remember the last time we'll say disjointed, to be honest with you, as a back four. I really don't know. And the main back four were there. Alisson in goals. There's no excuses for personnel. So for me, it just seems a little bit of complacency, a little bit of disjointed kind of vibe between the four. But as Klopp said, there were 3 of them on national team duty. 1 wasn't there. I can only hope at training they took offence to that last game and actually started to fix it.
Yeah, Jamie?
Yeah, I kind of agree to a point. I mean, I'm not one to overly panic. And the main reason is, if you look across the back 5, we have genuine world-class players, arguably the best in their positions, certainly in the full-back and Van Dijk, and obviously with Alisson. So I think for me, there is cause for concern a little bit. But when you actually isolate the goals themselves, I think one thing you've got to do, first of all, is give immense credit to Leeds. I think the way that they played is quite rare. In that the numbers they commit forward, although the lads would have been working through shape and phases of play and training, at one point I think I saw Leeds have 7 men in the box. Now, this isn't something that happens often, and it's certainly not something that as defending champions playing at home, you can try to counter by sitting in and looking to block. So I think one is the opposition. You have to give them credit. I think there was individual errors. I think for the first goal, I think Phillips was able to turn too easy without pressure and clip a long ball over the top. Mm-hmm. I think Trent got done by an individual bit of brilliance. He probably would question himself a little bit. Gomez got sucked in, and then Alisson, you could argue, although he's fantastic, probably could have done better with the goal. So, 100%. And then obviously Virgil makes an uncharacteristic error. Now I think we can write on one hand the number of errors that he's made over the last few years. So it's better to get them out the way early. What I would say is, rather than looking at the defensive frailties, because I think there is something in once, post-COVID, and once the league was won, you do drop 5 to 10%. Although the players won't admit it, and although Klopp, will talk about intensity, I also think there's another element that Liverpool are playing in stadiums without fans, and this team feeds off the emotion of the fans. So I think for me, there's a lot of factors at play. Not having the emotion and the concentration levels that having a crowd in that stadium will make sure that you maintain. And that's where you may have seen a couple of lapses of concentration and lads being a little bit lax, like Pete said. One thing that I would say is we have the world-class players to fix it on the training field. And if there's one manager to maintain standards, it's going to be Jurgen Klopp.
You're a prick. That's all I'm going to say. You're a prick. You took
I steal your point there.
No, I was going to talk about the fans, right? I was going to say how much of an impact is the club like Liverpool Football Club, who's such an emotional, attached club to their city, to their fans, and they thrive off. You can imagine that stadium at a 4-3 result. Can you imagine what Anfield would have sounded like?
You know what's really interesting? In the Bundesliga, they actually found since COVID came back, all the away teams and all the small teams have been benefiting off the lack of fans. But I think Liverpool are maybe in terms of big clubs, they're probably the only team that are probably feeling it more than anyone. I think Man City are probably feeling it the best. They're like, oh, this is fantastic.
Well, it's
they never had fans.
Well, it's Manchester City and Arsenal both are like, yeah, this is normal for us. This is nothing new. But then for us, it's like, where's our fans? Where's the cop? Where's You'll Never Walk Alone? Where's our songs? Where's that connection between the fans? And I agree with you, Jamie. I think we have to get used to that because I can't see fans for the next 6 months. And we can't use that as an excuse every time the game gets close.
That would be my biggest worry for the season. And I don't mean that to sound over dramatic. I think if teams are looking to close the gap, I think the no fans affect Liverpool more than most. Arsenal have a toxic fan base, so they will be delighted with a bit of peace. I was actually talking to Al Rogers, who I do the boot room with, and obviously he played Nottingham Forest in the Premier League, and we were talking about concentration levels. And myself, on a much lower scale, would have played in front of, let's say, 5,000 people in a stadium. And even with the small scale fans, you won't believe the only time you break concentration is when, let's say, a ball goes out for a throw, because there is just constant noise. The game is at such a fast pace. So I was talking to Alan about this, and he said you cannot underestimate how much of an impact on performance no fans could have, not only in how away teams approach games. They're more aggressive, they're more confident, they don't need to settle into games, they can play fearlessly, which Leeds showed, and as the defending champions of the league, we're there to be got at. This is every team's cup final. So Liverpool, I think, have an upward hill to climb with that. I would say, though, from my side, I couldn't be confident in this group of players, in the mentality that the manager has put in place. He has worked on creating this culture within the players where, everything, they have to fight for everything. Every blade of grass, they want to run the yards. And we were creating chances against Leeds. Let's not forget that. We could have scored a bag full more. I think it's just one of those, Liverpool found a way to beat a very awkward, banana skin talented team on the first game of the season, and are going to be buoyed with a lot of learnings, which from a coaching perspective, and I'm sure you'll agree, Pete, if you're able to get a win and also get things that you can learn from and work on the training field, it's kind of like the perfect storm.
It's like that thing you were saying about the crowd as well. I mean, it's one of the most favourite pieces of commentary of any commentator, more often than not, Peter Drury at the moment, where they say, there was a massive call of man on from the cop. Liverpool get that all the time, where, I feel like a player that the two players, in my opinion, that could benefit a lot from that are probably Van Dijk and Gomez. Like we said, we can count on one hand the amount of mistakes that Van Dijk's made. It's hardly any. But having the crowd on your back, whether it's 5,000 people or 50,000 people, it's just, it gets, there's a Greek word for it, Pete, nevra, which is probably where the word nerves come from, but it gives you a good type of nerves. It gives you, because you're on your feet, you've got butterflies in your stomach, but that means it's bringing up that instinct in you. That's what makes us, that's that animalistic instinct to want to be on our toes and make sure that we're not, letting ourselves down at all.
But not to be like a Debbie Downer, but at the end of the day, those mistakes that we always talk about with Van Dijk, there's only one hand, full of mistakes. They've all been post-COVID, if you really think about it, right? So I just hope to God this is not a recurring thing, but I don't think it will. As Jamie said earlier, in terms of the mentality, the way we are as professionals, I think we're at a good place as a club, as players, as everything. To be honest with you, as even a fan base, believe it or not. Don't look at Twitter all the time, but it's we're at a good place. I just hope to God that they just adjust very quickly with this situation with no fans, because we're going to a place this weekend where the fan base is shit. So they're lucky that their fans aren't there either.
I was going to just, I'll go back to you, Pete, on this, because we're just moving into the Chelsea territory. Obviously, we've had those little bits of defensive lapses, but I think, Jamie, you make a good point, because it's they are individual errors, and Klopp is always quick to point these out. And it's actually been like that in the past, where Liverpool often concede. Like, it's almost like Klopp says, I've seen a new goal be conceded this week, as opposed to other teams that they always get. I mean, Liverpool, we used to always say we always concede from set pieces, always concede from a back stick cross, or we always concede from a specific counter. But now it's kind of like comedy of errors usually leads to a goal. But moving on to Chelsea, Pete, they've spent a lot of money. We've got this fake rivalry coming up. Do you reckon Sky or somebody's paid Lampard to just talk shit in the media? Is it creating this fake? He really is. He looks like he's been paid to just talk shit, because not one manager in world football who's gone head to head with Klopp and tried to create a stir out of him.
No one really, no.
No one. This is ridiculous. He's making a fool of himself.
Well, I hope that fat shit eats a nice humble pie this weekend.
Well, having said that, he's bought a lot of players. Chelsea, look, they did well to make the top four last season. I think I was a fan of Lampard at Derby. I was following for some reason Mason Mount's career. I don't know why. And I was a big fan of how Lampard was releasing him. And I always thought that a good player that Lampard would be able to coach is any sort of breaking from midfield, attacking midfield, a pseudo striker. I always thought he'd work well with Dele Alli, and that's why I was interested to see what Mourinho does with him, like that whole Lampard thing. But I was interested to see what Lampard would do with Mount. But he did a great job last season, getting in top four. But now he's got all this talent. The first game was they weren't largely impressive, but they've got the weapons to hurt Liverpool this time round, Pete.
Well, I think that was their first win in five. In 5 games, I'm pretty sure. I watched a little bit of the game, I won't lie to you, and let's have a look. Yeah, that was their first win in the last 5 games, I think. Yeah. So, look, they conceded 13 shots, I believe it was, on goal. For me, that screams alarm bells everywhere.
This was against Brighton.
Yeah. So I
watched the game. Brighton were, because I rewatched the game, and everyone was saying, I thought I read somewhere that it looked like Chelsea were impressive. I think they must have just meant Werner, winning the pen. But I watched it. Brighton did a great job.
They actually held more possession. If you're going to go, off possession stats, I think they had something like 52% possession to Chelsea's 48. And again, to concede 13 shots to a Brighton who survived relegation last year, I think. To come up against the Liverpool after just scoring 4 goals, for me, I'm licking my lips, to be honest there.
Yeah, I'd be similar to Pete. I watched the Brighton game, and I think where this game will suit us, and don't get me wrong, look, it's not going to be an easy game by any stretch of the imagination, but Chelsea's weak point is their back four. And in particular goalkeeper, and Liverpool have the bravery and the confidence to attack that. I think what we will always have to be mindful of with Chelsea is their speed moving forward, runners into channels. Now, I think they could cause us problems, but I do still expect us to have the bulk of the possession, and I expect us to go there full of confidence and to go on and get the victory. I think Chelsea have. So it's going to be a different season for Lampard now. There's a lot of expectation that comes with making big signings, and he kind of had a free hit, if you want to use those terms, last season. In that, with the transfer ban, there was no expectation, there was no real pressure. So everybody looked at it and said, "Oh, he's a promoter of youth, and he did so well to get into the top 4." I wouldn't necessarily agree with that to a large degree, and I think you're seeing that now in that where all these young players now that he's gone out and bought. Young players from different countries. He's not exactly promoting youth. So for me, I think this is why, and to go back to your first point, George, about the little bit of needle that you're seeing coming from Frank Lampard, I think he knows his head's on the chopping block. And I think he's the Klopp is smart. This isn't his first time at the dance. He's done this before. And he just had to drop in the little comments about oligarchs and being funded by states, and all that was all he said. He just lit the match and walked away. The Lampard bit, which is fantastic because it shows pressure, and players can feed off pressure. So if he's nervous going into that game and he's a little bit tetchy, the dressing room will pick it up in no time.
I want to go back to you, Jamie, and see, because considering Chelsea do have those weaknesses in the back, and Pete, we can go to you after this. What do you think Liverpool can use to their advantage? I mean, we've seen Trent have a field day from set pieces. How do you get set pieces? You just fuck around outside their box and hope that they foul you once or twice if they're going to give Mo Salah any sort of fouls or whatever. But given the fact that they do have a weak back four, is it a chance for if we are doing a 4-3-3? Let's just assume Klopp always goes 4-3-3. Is it an opportunity for the front three to sort of wreak havoc, or is it a chance for us to maybe to go more central 4-2-3-1? Does Minamino make an appearance, perhaps? What do you think we can do in our current form that can really take advantage of the weakness of Chelsea's backline?
I wouldn't expect wholesale changes. I would expect us to be 4-3-3, but I think the message is very much press high, try and win the ball from their back line in their defensive zone, and get the ball turned over and move it quickly. I think if Liverpool go full throttle, and we press the life out of Chelsea, and when we do get the ball, as I said, we move it quickly, we'll be able to progress up the pitch very, very fast. So for me, I wouldn't expect any big changes. I would expect the midfield three to go back to his tried and trusted with Fabinho at the 6, Henderson and Gini Wijnaldum, and then you have the likes of, and this is where it's a lovely problem to have, the likes of a Keita or the likes of Minamino from 65-70 if we need that injection of creativity. But for me, it'd be about putting the building blocks in place to win the game, not giving anything silly away, give us a foundation to then go on and win the game as it progresses. And I'd go with that tried and tested midfield to give us that platform.
Well, the formation that they played against Brighton was a 4-2-2-2. So they had the two deep holding midfielders with...
Such a FIFA formation from Lampard. For fuck's sake.
Well, it was Kante and Jorginho were the two sixes, or the two holding midfielders, I should say, sorry. Now, to be fair, I look at that midfield, and in front of them two, I believe, was Mason Mount and Kai Havertz. Mm-hmm. So Kai, not really adapted to the Premier League, definitely not adapted to a press that we're going to give him. And up front was Werner and I can't remember the last one, I think it was Abraham, I can't remember who it was. But again, Werner, what did Werner say after the game? I've never played against three big defenders like this before. Well, he's got Joe Gomez and Van Dijk up his arse now.
He's hurt himself as well.
Yeah,
himself in that game.
I'm not too... Look, I think there's going to be a hole in midfield. I think the midfield battle is key for this game. And I think with what Jamie said, going with our trusted midfield trio, I think is key. I think we do need to dominate the midfield, because with the two deeper ones, I feel like Firmino can cause all havoc. I think Firmino is key as well to overload that when he drops in to create like a 4. So like a 4v2 with their two deeper midfielders. And I think with Reece James on one side and Marcus Alonso on the other, I think that... the Salah and Mane typical diagonal running behind, I think, is going to cause all sorts.
I think I don't want to go. I think that we should have a little moment to. It's too early in the season to sit here and go, "Oh my goodness, it's happening again with Mo Salah." He's had such great seasons every single year. So even saying, "Oh, is this going to be like season 1?" I mean, he's been consistent. It's not 40 goals, but he's been consistent. We can't get too excited of, is he going to have another 40-goal season now? It's only been one game, but is there stuff that we can notice? Because he kind of went a little bit flat at the end of last season. A lot of people put it down towards trying to chase the golden boot. But what things did we see from Salah, Jamie, that you think... It's a caveat to be talking about post-Leeds, because, Leeds are newly promoted. They are a great side. But even in a game like that, it's still a Premier League game. They're still a great side. They're well-drilled. Salah had a great game. It wasn't just scoring the hat-trick. He earned his hat-trick. He won one of the penalties himself. The volley, we've actually seen him hit that volley a few times and missed. Obviously, hitting the target always helps. In
the same game, actually, as well, with his right foot.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah. What did we see from Salah that's just been different? It looked like he was almost like a brand new player.
Hunger. hunger was the main one for me. He just you have days as a player where everything you're just at it. Just give him the ball and this is the thing with the front three. You know, if one of them has an off day, we usually have the other two that can create havoc. So for me, it was just one of those days where everything fell for Mo. He just wanted the ball. He was driving. He was brave. You could see his confidence was high in the way that he took on the volley, which was executed perfectly. That said, you know, we could quite easily go to Chelsea, and Mo has one of the days where he needs 3 chances to score 1. So I think this is the thing with our front three, and it's opened up a lot of debate actually recently, particularly around Roberto Firmino, is as the great facilitator, does Firmino take enough of his chances? And I think you could probably label that at Mo and Bobby at times in they miss some of the simple ones and then they'll score world-class goals. Whereas the most reliable out the three for me, big game, big moments, is Sadio Mane. He always turns up. He always delivers in the biggest moments. So to have 3 players of that quality, all offering quite different things, you know, if you're Chelsea's backline and a goalkeeper who doesn't like shots from distance, you must be looking at Liverpool coming at the weekend, slightly nervous.
Is Oxlade-Chamberlain at all available?
No,
he's
not.
not.
6 weeks or so.
No,
I love how Klopp he told Oxlade-Chamberlain when he came in after his whatever he came from Arsenal, that diseased club, that toxic club. But he's come in, he's put his arm around Ox's shoulder and said, "Just shoot, bro." And then Fabinho is like, "I want to be this nice, octopus style, vacuum cleaner number 6." And Klopp's put his arm around him and he's just gone, "Shoot, bro." And I love how he's been telling people to shoot. If there's ever a time to shoot, Kepa's conceded 13. His last 13 have been from outside the box. So what a time to take some shots, Pete.
Yeah, but that's the thing. We're a club that kind of wants to be neat and tidy and work our way into the goal, right? I think people like Trent, free kicks, maybe Robbo cutting in on getting a chance. I'm not too sure, but other than Fabinho, we haven't really seen a consistent shooter from distance. And this is where I think I'd love to see Firmino do on the weekend. I'd love to see Firmino pop out like he does out of that line, cause problems, bring a defender with him, or if they don't follow, can he turn on the ball and just whack one? Because we've seen him turn and shoot and put it in the back of the net.
Something that Klopp's starting to do. We've talked about this before, Pete, and Jamie. This is something that Pete and I love discussing in the last few weeks. Is that it's a little bit of a Rafa-ism from Klopp to play a certain way in 60, 70 minutes and then change things up. Like we've seen, I mean, it's great to see Klopp go to the 4-2-3-1, and one of the things that happens in the 4-2-3-1 is that Bobby comes a little bit deeper.
That's perfect. Yeah.
Oh, go on, Pete.
I was just saying,
I've teed him up, haven't I?
Well, that's just going on to the Thiago talk. I think with the 4-2-3-1, I think with Firmino pops in as the attacking midfielder, with Salah possibly going as high as possible, and Mane and Minamino on either side, I think you look at that attacking 4, and all of a sudden you go, holy shit. And then you feel safe because behind them too, you've got Thiago and Fabinho.
And you know what I loved as well? Mane and Salah doing a little bit of tiki-taka with each other, slapping each other on the back, couple of laughs, couple of giggles. Oh, you score. No, you score. Can one of you fucking score, by the way? But, it was great to see them both, exchanging passes with each other. It's, hopefully it can... And they won the table tennis tournament as well, didn't they?
Look, when you look at, I never got the big media frenzy around that. I want my strikers to be hungry to score goals. I want them to be selfish. I want them to be hungry to be the top scorer in the league. So I don't see an issue. And I think one of the to finish on the Chelsea game, I guess one thing that I don't think has been made enough of is when you face a Liverpool. Let's say, for example, you want to be brave and you want to go at us. You think there's an opportunity to get it at our back four. I think you made a great point before. Norwich, they tried to do it. I think Leipzig have tried to do it in the past. I think Leeds have tried to do it. And when these teams have come at us, yes, they've caused us problems. But what happened at the other end? We scored 4-3. We scored multiple goals in that game. So it's a difficult one for an opposition side because, yes, you could say, look, Liverpool maybe could be got at, but what that means is it leaves space in behind, and we've seen what those front three can do when they're given space. So it'd be interesting to see how Lampard approaches this game. My guess is that they won't overly commit. I think they'll look to win the ball high. In transitions, they'll look to break quickly, but I think they'll be comfortable to let us have more of the ball in that game, given our undoubted quality.
Well, I'll go back to you, Jamie, on predictions now, heading towards the end of our Chelsea preview. What do you expect to see from the game in terms of, results? Just a general prediction, I guess, score? difficulty rating?
Do I be brave? Okay, I would either go a score draw or a 2-1 win for Liverpool. Oof. Am I allowed to pick two?
Yeah, I like. Oh yeah. I like the second one.
2-1 win for Liverpool.
2-1 win for Liverpool, Pete.
I'll just go back on what Jamie was saying in terms of Lampard. I think he's going to realise. I think he's going to feel the pressure. I think he will come at us. I think I'm at home. I've spent the money. I've got the player they wanted so bad in Timo Werner. I think he's got some wind in his sails. I think he's going to come at us.
You know what he's done? He's kind of like he's played poker and he's already put all his money on his cards. You can't pull out now. He's already gone, I'm this great manager. So he's kind of like he's forced to do it. He has to come at us.
I think he will come at us, and I think the score will end up being 2-1 Liverpool or 3-1 Liverpool.
2-1 Liverpool. I'm going to go for 3-love. How about that?
No, we're conceding. We're conceding.
We're conceding a goal from Ziyech.
I have to agree, unfortunately. I do think they'll score. Just hopefully it's late in the game and the game's already put to bed so we don't go through heart attack City like the Leeds game.
Well, Jamie, it's been fantastic to have you on the show. Obviously, I just wanted to ask you quickly about how your podcast is going, Boot Room Podcast. We obviously got a little bit of an insight into the show. You've had an ex-Nottingham Forest striker or player you said that you had on the show. How's it all going with that?
Yeah, really good, mate. I mean, I've been involved in podcasting for a number of years now, both personally and professionally. I was involved with the LFC Day Trippers, who I know you guys are friends with, for a number of years. And then through time commitments and a lot of other things, I just fancy I love creating content. So I've got a good connection or network of ex-professionals and people in media. And Al Rogers has had a great career, Nottingham Forest, Leicester City, played in the Premier League a huge amount of times. And I'm also on the podcast with Christy Holly, who's head coach over in America now, in Louisville. And it's just a diverse, it's a good dynamic between us. Al is direct as you can come. His stories from when he was playing is literally gold. And Christy is usually the well thought out, level headed one of the three of us, because me and Al can get overly emotional. So to be honest, mate, it's just a great way for me to be able to talk football for 45 minutes a week without the missus and the kids running up and disturbing me. So to be honest, it's been a load of fun.
Well, Pete and I have been following your podcast. We're big fans. For those who are listening here on the LFC couch, give it a listen. The Boot Room Podcast, it's fantastic. Jamie's awesome, and we look forward to having you on the show a little bit more. And we'd love to come into the boot room with you, and we'd love to do some content with you. But for the time being, we're looking forward to Chelsea. Looking forward to the signing of a new player, our new number 6, hopefully. Thiago. Hopefully nothing happens with that. It's knock on wood.
Don't jinx it. Don't jinx it.
Oh, shit. But anyway, we'll look forward to Chelsea, and we'll see you afterwards. Thanks for listening.
Demanded that he should score for Liverpool. Salah to settle it. In front of the Kop. Delicious cross. Alexander-Arnold. It's from him.
From doubter to believer.